Number 13 is never mix with the subwoofer, please. Would you mix with extra tweeters if they were as sexy as the sub? Oh bro, I got like 15 tweeters up at my studio, son. This place is banging. Who wants to mix in a bass heavy environment? What's that gonna do to your mix? Everything's gonna be top end heavy. I know some great engineers out there are using subs, but it's just for presentation. My goodness, someone comes in, you got some dope trap beat you wanna show them, please put on the subs. Pull out your old KRK Rockets. Bring out those Atom speakers. Those Atom speakers are great presentation monitors. Not the best transfer, in my opinion, the white earbud test and the car test. You're gonna fail both tests miserably if you're mixing with the subwoofer. There's a reason NS10s are still so popular. It's because they're neutral, they're flat. They're gonna give you exactly what the consumer is gonna hear on the other end. That's what you should be going for. Amphions and ATCs and barefoot monitors, those are popular because they're flat, but they're also accurate. So what you're hearing is very detailed and you're able to make faster mix decisions. That stuff's important. A subwoofer? Number 14 is more of a clarification than it is a tip or a trick. And that is, I want to talk very quickly about the PULTEC EQ. A lot of people say, what is this MASTERBUS EQ, this PULTEC? Why is it so popular? And this is a twofold answer I give them. First of all, you gotta understand the difference between a 2-bus, a master bus, a mix bus, a summing bus, your master out, your mix out. Well, guess what? It is all the exact same thing. Those are synonymous words. Your 2-bus is your master bus. When you slap a MASTERBUS EQ on your system or a MASTERBUS compressor, that means that everything coming out of all your tracks and stems are going through this one piece of gear. And the PULTEC has emerged as the cream of the crop when it comes to MASTERBUS EQ. And I just want to really quick talk about why. In the original manual that came with this PULTEC, it said never boost and cut the same frequencies at the same time. Well, boosting and cutting the same frequency at the same time is what has put this piece of gear on the map. Engineers quickly found out that that's the magic of this piece of gear. For instance, some treatments include boosting 60 to 150 hertz to boost the low end. They then reduce the muddiness with a cut from like 250 to 500 hertz. So you're cutting and boosting at the same time. And finally, you add presence with a small boost from about 4 kilohertz to 10 kilohertz. You do those 2 boosts in one cut and your mix just goes all while the manual advised you never to boost and cut simultaneously. Again, what did I say about making mistakes and doing things bass-ackwards? The uniquely musical contours produced by this technique, especially in the low end, is why every studio in the world has a PULTEC. And that piece of gear is 60 years old. And that's just incredible to me. A lot of companies have come out and cloned it. It's become a staple and they're stable, such as Manley. Their stereo PULTEC EQ is killer, but it ain't as good as a PULTEC. I have a stereo PULTEC with an L-Core transformer on it made by Grinder, and it's great, but it's not a real PULTEC. Personally, the best MASTERBUS compressor that I can recommend to you is an ALTEC 436C. I think that there's some plugins out there. I wouldn't know because I have 3 pairs of them myself. And I send them to someone who I'm not going to tell you about using a schematic that I'm not going to show you. It's an RS-124 Abbey Road conversion. In Abbey Road Studios, they couldn't afford the Fairchilds at the time, the 670s, so they used the ALTEC 436Cs. The C version, differentiated by the ratio and threshold potentiometers beneath the VU, had screw pots that you could put an actual tactile potentiometer on, and you'd have that control right out of the gate. And then they modified it further, and it is one of the greatest sludgy, little mushroomy, gorgeous, very mute compressor on the planet. To me, there's nothing sexier than a stereo pair of matched 436Cs that have been converted to that RS-124 topology. It is a killer set of compressors. If you can afford a pair, I say get it. If you're looking for one holy grail stereo MASTERBUS compressor, nothing is better in my humblest of opinions. Okay, so that brings us to our final tip, and that is to truly understand bit depth and sample rate. This sounds like something that's extremely boring, to be honest with you. When I was in college studying audio, we took a class where we had to be able to eventually identify through practice and repetition, sample rates and bit depths just by listening to a recording. Especially when you listen to the same 10-second sample back to back. 192, 96, 48, 44.1. You're gonna notice a big difference. And you also should know what the heck that means. And I'm gonna tell you, and now you'll know. In about 1 minute, you will know what that means. Sample rate is the number of audio units recorded in time. So how many are being taken? Kind of like IPS on a tape, inches per second. How fast the tape is moving is how much information is being gathered. If it's passing over a tape head, when you sing the words, hello, and it's passing over a record head, if it's passing very slow, there's not a lot of information there, but it's passing very fast, it's recording more information on a longer stretch of linear tape, which, by the way, is rust particles on tape being organized and manipulated by a record head. So when they pass back over the playback head, it actually regenerates the same electrical signal. I love that that's what tape is. It's rust particles. They're being reorganized by a record head. It's really, 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 humans are freaking amazing, aren't they? So sample rate is the number of audio units that are recorded in time, in a specific amount of time. Bit depth measures how precisely those samples are recorded and converted to binary numbers. So let's talk about what the heck that means, okay? You hear my voice coming out right now. I am not in the same space and time you are. Well, now we're gonna get quantum, maybe we are, but technically we're not. I recorded this in the past, you are hearing it in the present. And what's happening is, there's a Sennheiser boom mic right here that has a diaphragm inside of it, and it's a moving coil. And when the sound waves come out of my mouth and hit the diaphragm, it moves and generates a certain amount of electricity. It has a signature, how much it moves. And that electric signature travels down the cable into my Sony a7S II mirrorless DSLR camera, and there's a converter inside of there that's taking that information and turning it into ones and zeros. It's a language, right? This is computer language. This is how AI is gonna take over the whole world, and we're gonna be in little pods like in the Matrix, and they're gonna be sucking our plasma out of us to feed, I'm sorry. It's all good, Sarah Connor's gonna save us. So the quality of those converters dictate the quality of the conversion, meaning the translation is more accurate and more detailed, and it's just richer. And that's why a pair of Prism converters, which are like 10 grand, compared to like a PreSonus or your little red Scarlett Focusrite interface that's $200, sounds different because that conversion is of a different quality. That's what the bit depth is. So you have sample rate and bit depth. And now I want to talk about the magic behind sample rate and bit depth. And this is my little bonus tip or trick, or it's just information that I have collected over the last 30 years that I find absolutely mind-blowing, and I really want to share it with you. So you would think 192 is the highest quality and 44.1 is nominal accepted quality, and everything in between is exponentially better until you get to 192, right? And same with bit depth. That is not the case at all. I recently watched a very similar video in which an engineer was talking about bit depth and sample rate. The only difference between him and I was he was a far better engineer with far better credits than I have, and he taught me something that blew my mind that I'm just gonna pass forward to you. And he said that every time he hears a record that just doesn't sound like it fits right, it's invariably 48K. And every time he's using outboard gear and he's trying to work on a session and if nothing is coming together, or he's working on a project where things just aren't fitting, it's consistently 48K. And that kind of blew my mind because I know so many engineers, I'm not gonna say their names obviously, they're friends of mine, but they run some of the biggest studios in the world. One in particular, a friend of mine in Los Angeles, who swears that he puts everything in 48K because it's the best sounding sample rate. He says that clients ask him for 96 and he says, yeah, sure, and he sends them 48. And he's like, nobody ever can tell because 48 just sounds so good. And then you have this other engineer that says 44.1 sounds most musical to him, not 48K. And he also said that all his outboard gear plays nice with 44.1. He also went on to say that all his digital gear, like plugins and stuff, love 96K. He said 88.2 just sounds bland and it just kind of sits there and there's no movement and fluidity. And that blew my mind. And then later in the same week, after I had seen that video, I had a producer from Lake House Studios in Asbury in New Jersey, which is one of the biggest studios. If you're ever in New Jersey, I highly recommend Lake House Studios. They have a great SSL room and a great Neve room and wonderful people over there that work there. One of the things that he told me was he was working with this great producer and he was working in 16-bit 44.1. And the producer said to him, you're working in 16-bit? 32-bit is the only encoding bit depth that can capture like the real jazzy turnarounds of phrases and the vibe of the low end. That's that indescribable subharmonic thump that hits you in the chest. 32-bit depth is the only depth that really captures that feeling. So after my friend left, I started to record exclusively in 44.1 and 32-bit float. And ever since then, my mixes sound bigger and more emotional, and I can see deeper into my mixes. And 44.1 is the lowest nominal sample rate that you can select in Pro Tools. And yet it sounds more musical to me than any other sample rate. And 32 float, I'm able to capture much more of the low mids and lows than I was before, and I hear a noticeable difference. So I encourage you to do your own research, because on my rig, which is an Apollo X16, I love the Apollo X converters. I feel that they're head and shoulders above the old Silverface. The X series converters love 32-bit float, and all my outboard gear seems to love 44.1. So that's what works for me, and something may work totally different for you. But I encourage you to do some ear training and start to see if you can identify sample rates, listen for sample rates. It's very easy to tell an MP3 from a WAV file. And in that same regard, doing ear training with sample rates is also something that you can get really good at. And you'll start to notice that certain gear sounds better with certain sample rates. Certain DAWs sound better with certain sample rates. And then certain interfaces especially sound better at different sample rates. And when you put it all together, that's when you're gonna create your sound. And this is kind of the next level, the maturity of you as an engineer on taking your rig and paying attention to what's really going on behind the curtains in your control room or in your home studio. This is where we start to make really important decisions about creating what will become known as your sound. So that's it, that's all I got for you today. Number 8, I think, is the most important. It all boils down to number 8. You remember what it was? If it sounds good, say it with me, it is good, amen. Those are 15 of my favorites. There's hundreds more out there that I'm gonna go study and learn, and I'm gonna be learning more tomorrow than I knew today. And that's how life works, right? So each one teach one. Pass this on to somebody else. Share this video with another budding engineer. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that little bell notification so when I do make these videos, you are notified about it. Take care of one another, love one another. Peace and love, Planet Rock.